Okay, now I'm recording. So all that cool stuff, the recap, is not on there, but this is on there. The 100% solution. Again, we're talking about the fact that you are not making your emotional well-being dependent upon things, people, situations outside of your control. People can contribute to it, but they are not, you don't make them responsible for it. And unfortunately, in most relationships, in most marriages, I'm talking about in my experience when people have come to me for coaching, they are either consciously or unconsciously looking to the other person for their sense of worth, their sense of value, their peace. And that is one of the things that creates so many problems in the relationship. So let's look at this from a different perspective for just a moment. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11, the Apostle Paul writes these words. He says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. Now, last year, I did a whole message. Matter of fact, I did it at Jerry and Gianna's church. Their pastor asked me to come in, and I talked about maturing as a Christian. We talked about maturity. And so this is one of the scriptures I use. Let me ask you this question. I'd like you guys to think about this for a second. If you want, you can write it down on the, if you have the handout, you can write it down on the space provided. What are some of the signs of immaturity that we see in children? When a child is immature, what are some of the things that are a sign of their immaturity or their childishness? I'd like you to take a moment, think about that. Come up with some answers, then share with me your answers. Signs of immaturity or childishness that we see in children. Just things that you have observed, especially for those of us who have raised children. Most of us have been children, so we probably have an idea of things that we've seen. Okay. So let me ask you, and anyone can start. You got a few answers down. What are some of the things that you've seen that are signs of immaturity, signs of childishness in children?
Selfishness.
Selfishness, okay. And let me ask this question. How is selfishness manifested? When children are being selfish, what do we see or hear?
Crying.
Mine.
Mine. Mine, me first, crying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tantrums.
What was that, Lailani?
Yeah.
She said that tantrums.
Tantrums? Okay.
Yeah. You made me do it?
You made me do it?
Others. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, blaming others.
Blaming others? Yeah, Karen and I were laughing this afternoon. We were talking with our oldest daughter, Olivia, and Karen looked at her. Olivia said something, and Karen said, I'm going to be sad at you tomorrow. And Olivia looked at her, she's like, what? I said, you don't remember saying that as a kid, do you? When Olivia used to get mad at us, she would say, I'm sad at you. She didn't know how to say mad, so she said, I'm sad at you. And then she would go, and I'm going to be sad at you tomorrow. And so I used to always, whenever she would say that, I would always say to her, I'm glad that you understand you have choice. She's like, I remember saying that. I said, I used to say it all the time. I'm sad at you. I'm going to be sad at you tomorrow. So yeah, that's one of the things, like, you know, you're the one that makes me upset. You're the one that makes me angry. Any other thing that we see as childishness? Temper tantrums, blame.
Frustrating easily.
Being frustrated easily. Okay. Gianna, did you have something?
Yeah, lying or not telling the whole truth.
Not lying
just
or not
to get
telling
away.
Not what?
So you can like kind of get away or not get in trouble. You kind of not tell the whole truth.
So you don't tell the whole truth. You don't want to get in trouble.
That's the truth.
Shut down.
Shut down. Don't talk.
Oh.
How about this one? I'm taking my toys and I'm going home.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play with you anymore.
Yeah.
So these are things that we see in children. Guess what?
I can't wait.
I'm telling you, after working with people for over 25 years, I see these same things in adults. There is a quote on your handout. It's from Dr. Patricia Koval, who wrote a book called What Smart Couples Know, The Secret to Happy Relationships. She said, healthy marriages or relationships are created by adults not overgrown children in grown-up bodies.
Wow.
This is so true. I say this with the deepest respect for people that I've worked with. But when people have come to me and they need help, it is because, as a rule, we tend to be stuck in patterns of behavior, ways of thinking, feeling, and acting that are actually immature. They are childish. We are carrying on the same behaviors that we have done as children. We tend to get away with it because we go, well, I'm grown. I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I'm not acting like a child. And so we get upset with our spouse. We go, I'm not acting like a child. I'm just not going to talk to you. And I remember, and I can say, we're all Christians here. I have had people come into my office, Christians, who have not spoken to each other for 3 weeks. And I would look at them and I go, how do you function in your house and you have not talked in 3 weeks? And it was because something was said. And and again, these were not people who were being physically abusive or emotionally abusive, but someone got their feelings hurt and they just decided, I'm not going to talk to you. What you said, Jerry, I'm going to shut down. And so they don't talk to the person for 3 weeks. And these are Christians. And I remember, and I've dealt with this with Christian leaders. I'm talking leaders in the church, pastors, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, Jerry. I wasn't talking about you guys when I said this, but I've dealt with it. So, what happens, the reason I'm bringing this up is because when we're getting into personal responsibility or the 100% solution, this is how we move into maturity.
Yeah.
The 100% solution moves you out of immaturity into maturity.
I'm doing on purpose.
Yeah. So again, to have an emotionally successful marriage, it requires growth. It requires maturity. It requires that we step out of immature patterns of reacting and relating, and that we start moving into mature patterns of thinking, of feeling, and how we express our emotions, how we express ourselves to other people. And so one of the mature patterns that I see that we need to begin embracing is that of what I call personal responsibility, or the 100% solution. This is where I am no longer blaming you for what I think, what I say, what I do. I take full responsibility. I don't even blame you for how I feel. Now, again, this doesn't mean that other people, that they don't have an impact on our life, but it's always recognizing and always holding, I have a choice about how I respond, and I am responsible for how I respond. I'm responsible for how I respond mentally, what I think about you, what I think towards you, even how I feel. Now, that's sometimes when I say this is where people go, how I feel. I'm not responsible for how I feel. They made me feel this way.
Yeah.
which is the same thing our children tell us. You made me. I would not have done this if you hadn't. And so when we find ourselves saying, what happens is we take responsibility and we place it in someone else's hands. So one of the ways that can help us to deal with this is an exercise that we're going to do together here, and I call this the ownership exercise. This was not created by me. I wish I had created it. It was created actually by a psychologist that I studied under named Dr. Michael Hall. He created this. He normally calls it the power zone. I call it the ownership exercise, because what this exercise does, it has you own your 4 powers. In your handout, I sent you all the handouts for this, and I put it on separate sheets rather than all on one sheet. You don't have to read the instructions for this, because I'm going to walk you through it, but I wanted to give you the handout so you can always go back to it again. This exercise is about owning the 4 abilities that you possess that actually create your experience. And that's your ability to think, your ability to feel, your ability to speak, and your ability to behave or to take action. These create your experiences of life. These are your responses. The way we sometimes refer to this is you have 2 internal powers, your ability to think and feel, and then you have 2 external powers, your speaking and your behaving or your actions. And we express what we're thinking and feeling in what we say and do. And when we take what we are thinking and feeling and it becomes embodied and expressed in what we say and do, we're conveying an experience to someone else, our own internal experience, and then they have a choice about how they're going to respond. But if we take control of that, if we understand I have control, what a lot of people feel, especially when they first come in for me for coaching, they feel like they don't have control over this. It's like, I don't have any control over what I'm thinking and feeling. This kind of goes back to what Charles was saying again. It's like, what if I just find myself just reacting and responding? Jerry and Gianna, I coached them in their marriage. We coached for almost a year. When you guys first came, did you feel like you had control?
Not at all.
Yeah. You feel like you have more control now?
Yes.
A lot more.
Yeah.
A lot more.
They're a testimony to my work. So, and I think Sal just joined us. Sal, glad you're here with us. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. I want everybody just to mute their mic for a moment. If you can mute it. If you can't, don't worry about it. But mute your mic. I'm going to walk you through this exercise. And what this is really just taking ownership of your 4 powers, your 4 abilities, okay? So I want you to relax for a moment. Sit comfortably in your chair. And let's see, I'm going to make sure everybody is, I can mute everybody. Okay, just 1 second here.
I love it that our cell phone puts people to sleep.
Okay, there we go. So, and if everybody can still hear me, hold your hand up to let me know you can hear me. Okay, good. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me. Okay, so what you're going to do, first of all, I want you to notice just how you feel. Just notice how you feel right now. So just kind of take a moment, kind of scan yourself, scan your body, scan your emotions, just noticing how you feel. All right. And I want you to think about your ability to think. That you have this marvelous ability given to you by God. You can think thoughts. Now, we're not going to focus on any particular thought. It's just your ability to think. You have this ability to think thoughts. You can choose to think one thought or not think another thought. You can choose to think about the word cat, or you can think about the word blue. But you have this ability to think thoughts. And notice just how when you think about, I can think thoughts. I have this amazing ability. Notice how that feels. And I want you to be aware of your ability to have feelings and emotions. You have this wonderful ability to feel emotions. And just become aware of that for a moment. Take a deep breath and become aware of your ability to speak words. You can choose words. You can choose to say certain words or not say certain words. You can choose how you say those words. So be aware of that. Your ability to speak. And again, we're not focusing on specific words or specific emotions, but we're focusing on your ability to express these things. And then I want you to think about and become aware of your ability to take action. You have the ability to act, to behave in certain ways. You can choose certain actions. You can choose not to do certain actions. You chose to be here. You could have chosen to be somewhere else. You chose to sit where you're sitting. You could have chosen to sit somewhere else. So you have this ability to choose. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through these 4 powers. I'm going to have you own each of your 4 abilities. So what I want you to do first is I want you to think about something in your life that when you think about it, you can say with conviction, you can say with honesty, that is mine. And it's the mind of ownership. Like if I was to look at this pen, I would go, this is mine. And I know this is mine. This is my pen, it's mine. Or I can look at, I have a book here. I'm going to bring up my book. This is a comic book. I have a comic book here. My aunt is like, yeah, still read comic books, baby. So it's mine. So it's mine. So I can look at certain things that are around me. I go, that's mine. There's my coffee cup. That's mine. So I want you to think about something that you can honestly, when you look at it, you can say to yourself and feel, yes, this is mine. And there is no objection. You're not incongruent. You're completely, yes, this is mine. I want you to think about that. And it can be something simple. It can be a pen, a coffee cup. Okay? So I want you to think about whatever it is you're thinking about, that object, and I want you to say to yourself, yes, this is mine. It is mine. Now I want you to get that real good sense of mine. Notice where you feel that sense of mine. Notice where you feel it, where you experience that in your body, and just say it a few times. And if you're able to do so, say it out loud to yourself. This is mine. Mine. And notice how that feels to own something. Okay? So I want you to take a deep breath, let it out slowly. We're going to go through each of your 4 abilities, each of your 4 powers. You're going to own them with that sense of mind. Okay? So I want you to think about your ability to think thoughts, to create thoughts. And I want you to just say to yourself, my thinking, mine, and feel that sense of mine. My thinking, mine. and feel that. And just say that a few times to yourself. It is my thinking. It's mine. Doesn't belong to anyone else. It's my thinking. Mine. And take a deep breath and just say that to yourself one more time. My thinking, mine. Take a deep breath. Let that settle in, that it's your thinking, it's mine. And then what I want you to do, as you think about what's mine, think about your emotions, your ability to feel. You have the ability to feel. And as you become aware of your ability to feel, I want you to say to yourself, my feelings, mine. My ability to feel, it's mine. And if it helps you, I want you to gesture. And if those of you watching may notice, like when I say mine, I bring my hands to myself. Whatever is most natural to you, if it's natural to do so, how do you gesture when you go, yeah, that's mine. That belongs to me. It's mine. So in the way that's natural for you, you may do it differently than me. You may not gesture at all, but in a way that makes sense to you, this is mine. So think about my ability to feel. It's mine. My feelings, mine. My ability to express my emotions, mine. It's mine. I own it. It's mine. No one else's, mine. Take a deep breath. Just let it out slowly. One more time. My feelings, mine. And then what we're going to do is add the thinking to it. So I want you to think about your ability to think. Go, my thinking, my feelings, mine. It's my thinking, my feelings, they're all mine. My ability to think, my ability to feel, mine. Take a deep breath, let that settle in. Now we're going to move to the next one, is your ability to speak. And so just say, as you think about this again and feel that sense of mine, my speaking, it's mine. My speaking, mine. I get to choose what I say and how I say it. It's mine. My speaking, mine. No one else's, mine. You can even think about it as God has given me each of these gifts to think, to feel, to speak. They're mine. I'm the steward over them. They're mine. And then take a deep breath again. Let that settle in. And then we're going to bring all three of those together. So you can repeat after me. My thinking, mine. My feeling, mine. And my speaking, mine. It's all mine. Okay, then just take that all in and just say mine. Mine. And then the last one is your ability to act, your ability to behave, to take action. Take a deep breath again. Be aware of that feeling of mine. And just say after me, my acting, my behaving, it's mine. My acting, my behaving, it's mine. My acting, my behaving, and feel that mine, 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 mine. Take a deep breath. Let that settle in. Just become aware now of all four of your abilities. Just repeat after me. My thinking, mine. My ability to feel, mine. My feelings, mine. My ability to speak, mine. And my ability to act and behave, it's mine. And I want you to imagine taking all four of those powers in your hand, all four of those abilities given to you by God, bringing them to yourself and just saying, they're mine. You're all mine. Mine. Take a deep breath. Realize that they are mine. You can share them with others. You can express them to others, but they are always mine. Take a deep breath. Okay. All right. What I'd like for you to do is notice now how you feel. And I'd like you to come on and just share with me. You can turn on your mic and share with me. How do you feel now? When you think about these 4 powers, we went through this exercise. What are you feeling now? What are you experiencing now? What's different in how you feel? So turn on your mics.
I'll say I kind of feel more powerful,
Okay.
more in control, less helpless about all of that.
Okay, good. So more in control, more powerful. Anyone else?
I was going to say the same thing, Mike. More of a sense of ownership, like
Good.
I can control it better.
Good. Thank you, Myra. All right.
I feel teary.
You felt Terry?
Because I realized that these things belong to me. I control them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not been controlling them as if they were mine.
Right.
Wow. That's cool. That's powerful. Okay. Anyone else? Charles, Gianna, Jerry?
For me, it's a sense of relaxation and hope.
Relaxation and hope.
Yeah.
Great.
I agree. Mine was more relaxed and just less. I wasn't tense because I knew that's my responsibility, how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking. It's not in somebody else's hands. So I just feel more relaxed and not tense about it.
Cool.
I think too, for myself, is like with each step from thinking all the way to behaving in the end, from each step to the nether, is I was able to own it more and be comfortable. It started out with just a thought, my thinking, but then as I began to feel it and then speak it out, I was able to own it.
Yeah.
You know, it went all hand in hand to where I became assured, yeah, this is mine. I am exactly who I was created to be. I possess all these things to be able to do what I'm supposed to.
Yeah. And the reason I had you to notice how you're feeling before and then after is because most people, almost every time I've done this, people experience a real profound shift. They either say, I feel empowered. I feel like, wow, this really is mine. I've had people tell me, this is the first time I felt like it was mine. And that's why one of the reasons we do this, because it forms the basis and it helps you to embody, not just intellectually accept, which is important, that, hey, these are mine. This helps you to get it in your body, that these really are mine. It becomes what I call a felt sense of responsibility. And that goes a long way of helping us to feel more empowered when it comes to having control. The more you practice this, and this will be part of your homework assignment, the more it really gets ingrained. And I can tell you something. You get to the point where you stop saying, you just make me feel so, and you start catching yourself. And to this day, there are times like with my daughters or I'm upset about something, and I'll go, you guys make me, I feel so angry right now. Because I'm owning it. And it's like this mindset that, wait, I own it. But by the way, notice that it's not a thing of I stop feeling a particular emotion. It's not that I don't get angry. I do. I just own it now. It's like rather than going, you make me angry, it's I'm angry at this. I don't like what you did. I am frustrated at this. It doesn't mean that I no longer say you make me frustrated. It's I am frustrated at this. And so this is why this exercise becomes so important. One of the things that creates so much problems in relationship is that people do not own their powers. They mistakenly believe it belongs to someone else, that it's outside of them. So even when it comes to anger, or if it comes to joy, or it comes to love, they think it's something that proceeds from the outside in, when really it comes from the inside out. And so this is why we start off with choice, but then we do this exercise because it adds to the empowerment. It adds to the empowerment of your choice. And so if everybody could for a moment, you put up your hands like this. Okay, we'll actually do like this. Do like this. And then bring them apart. So you have some space in between. Now, your left hand, I want you to kind of wiggle that. We're going to call this your cue or your trigger. Okay? Cue, trigger, or stimulus. Stimulus, cue, or trigger. This, your right hand, becomes response. The way most people live is that we feel like there's something that happens in the world, and this does happen, something happens in the world, and it triggers within us a response. Okay? So you ever have somebody look at you a certain way? They look at you a certain way, there's a trigger there, and all of a sudden you start feeling a certain way. Or you might go, why are you looking at me like that? Don't look at me like that. Like my daughter Michaela, one time we were in the store, and kids, she was like 3 years old, and this lady was looking at her smiling, and Michaela got uncomfortable. So Michaela looks at her and said, "Stop looking at me." And I was like, oh. I said, Michaela, and the lady laughed. I said, "You didn't like her looking at you?" Michaela went, "No." And I said, "Okay." So we have a response. There is the stimulus or the trigger, and then we have a response. But most people think it's just cut and dry like that. Well, somebody says something, somebody does something, I respond. And that's why we tend to feel that we don't have any control. This out here determines this over here. But notice in between, if you hold your hand up, there's space.
Oh my God, crazy.
Okay?
No.
And in between that space is your freedom.
In
between that space is where you get to choose. And when you own that freedom, when you own that space, that's where change happens.
Wow.
When you own the responsibility, that is how you can then begin to change this. So even though there might be a cue here, and Charles, this is what we'll be getting into, this is where you make the change. It's in that space. So it's not just stimulus response, it's stimulus choice. And some of our choices are unconscious. Some of our choices have become so patterned that we don't even think about it. We're so used to it. It's just habitual. But you still have a choice. There's always a choice.
That's good.
So it's to know that between stimulus or trigger and response, there's that space. And when you start to own that space, that's your freedom. When you start to own it, that's where you move from immaturity to maturity. That's where you begin to really, in your relationship, you begin to grow up. And you begin to exercise that choice, and you begin to say, how do I want my experience of life to be? How do I want my experience of my marriage to be? And you begin to choose that for yourself. Like for, my wife, as I shared with you all last week, because she was abused as a child, sexually abused, physically abused, molested, raped as a child. When we first began to come together, husband and wife, when I would reach for her, she said, I didn't see your hand. I saw the hand of all of the people who abused me. So she was having a reaction. So my hand was a trigger. Her response was to pull away and clench up. It was to protect herself. All right. That was a habitual response that she developed over the years. As we began to learn these things about, trigger and response or stimulus and response, she was one of the first ones. Karen really got a hold. She heard someone say, in between stimulus and response, there's your freedom. She began to own her freedom. And she began to, in that space of freedom, she began to own her response. And she began to, on purpose, choose, what do I want my experience with my husband to be? And not base it upon what happened in the past. Now, don't misunderstand me. It took work. It wasn't like she just decided, this is what my experience is going to be, and the next day that it changed. No, it didn't happen like that. I can guarantee you, because I was there. It didn't happen like that. But I began noticing the change. And I began to notice she was making a difference, and she was responding to me differently. And it's because she owned it. And when we start to own it, that's when we begin to experience freedom. That's when we own the freedom, we experience freedom. When we own the freedom, we begin to create the change. We begin to create the experience. But it's the only way that can happen. We have to own it for ourselves. We can't expect our wife to own it. We can't expect our husband to own it. We can't expect our partner to own it. We have to, even in friendships, it's the same thing. You have to own it. And when you own it, you begin to experience more freedom. Any questions about this or comments before I move on? Any questions or comments?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Cool. Thank you. So another aspect of personal responsibility is, and if you want to have a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage, is understanding and operating out of what I call the responsibility for two distinction. The responsibility for two, or 2 and 4 distinction. There's a distinction that you make between what am I responsible for and what am I responsible to. This really helped me in my early on years of marriage and in working with couples. We are responsible for ourselves. We're responsible for our thoughts, our emotions, our words and actions. But you are not responsible for the thoughts, the feelings, the words, the actions, and the behaviors of others, especially your partner. Okay, let me say that again. You're responsible for your thoughts. You're responsible for your feelings. You're responsible for your emotions. You're responsible for your actions. You are not responsible for the thoughts, feelings, words, and actions of your partner. We are responsible. Now, here's the key. You are responsible to others. You are responsible by how you choose to think towards others, how you feel towards others, how you act towards others. In other words, you are responsible for how you express your powers to other people. So we are responsible for how we relate and how we respond to others, but we are not responsible for their thinking, their emotions, their actions, their behaviors. You've got to, it's a really simple but a key distinction. Again, I was taught this by Dr. Michael Hall years ago when I first took a training with him. And I remember sitting there going, whoa. It's simple, but it's profound. And here's what it is. Let me ask you a question. What do you think happens when we assume responsibility for the thoughts, feelings, words, and actions of others? When we assume responsibility for their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, what happens to them? What happens to them? That's the first question. What happens to them?
They get annoyed because they feel like you're trying to manipulate them or control them.
Okay, so they'll get annoyed because they could feel like you're trying to manipulate or control them. What else? What happens?
Defensive.
Yeah.
They get you say defensive, Jerry?
Yeah.
They get defensive?
Defensive.
Leilani?
Don't they get they could get codependent or dependent?
They can get codependent. Yep.
They don't take responsibility for their own actions.
They don't take responsibility. Now, everything you're saying is true. They don't take responsibility for their own actions. They become codependent upon you, meaning they're dependent upon you to make them happy.
Oh, yeah.
They're dependent upon you for their peace. They're dependent upon you for their sense of worth and value. Or some people, if you make yourself responsible, then you're going to engage in actions to try to get them to feel a certain way, which means they can feel like you're trying to manipulate me.
Oh.
Okay? All the things that you all have said are things that can happen. Here's another question. When we make ourselves responsible for the thoughts, the words, the actions, the feelings of others, what happens to us?
Get burned out.
We get burned out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying yell now. It's like, we get burned out.
You can get very frustrated and very angry because you can't control them.
Yes. We get very frustrated. What did you say, Jerry?
Almost give up. Like, why try?
Why try?
Right.
I mean, how many of us have said this? No matter what I do, I can't make you happy.
Catch-22. That is absolutely.
Yeah. Catch-22.
Mm-hmm.
So these are things that tend to happen. Again, when people are coming to me for coaching, this is something we have to deal with and establish the distinction between what you are responsible for and what you are responsible to. The responsibility to, the responsibility for. Would you say something, Gianna?
Yeah, this was something when me and Jerry came to you that we both struggle with really bad. We were trying to take responsibility of how each other felt, not for ourselves, but I thought I was carrying the burden of why he was feeling or doing what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he felt like, why even try? I'm never good enough. So when we first came to you, it was a lot of learning how to take responsibility for ourselves individually.
Yeah.
And it really helps.
And how frustrated did you feel, Gianna? And Jerry, I'll ask you too. How frustrated did you guys feel being responsible for the other person's thoughts and feelings?
We were at our breaking point.
Yeah. Oh, it was just an overwhelming burden.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we couldn't get past. We couldn't get past it because we were so hung up on, why was she making me feel like this and why was I making her feel like that?
Right.
Instead of focusing on ourselves.
And not being able to no matter what you do, the other person's not happy.
Yes.
And I remember, Gianna probably remember this. I remember we're doing one of our coaching sessions. Gianna looked at me with complete total frustration in her voice, and she says, "Why do I have to be responsible for how he feels?" And I looked at her and I said, "You don't." And I remember she just kind of looked at me like, "What?"
I don't. I did. I was like, "What?"
and I asked her. I said, "Who gave you that job? Who told you you were responsible for him?" But I remember at first you were kind of like, "What?"
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I thought that was my role as a wife.
Yeah.
I thought that was my role.
It's my job to make the other person happy. It's my job to make them feel good. When we assume responsibility for others, this creates, in psychology, what they call enmeshment relationships. We get enmeshed with another person's thoughts and feeling, which means we lack healthy mental and emotional boundaries.
Yeah.
Your sense of individuality, it gets compromised. Your sense of being an individual gets suppressed.
Yes.
And what ends up happening is you lose your sense of, where do I begin and this other person end?
That's right.
And you get really enmeshed with the other person. Here's some signs of enmeshment. And I forgot to put down, I actually got this from some articles from Psychology Today. So I'll go back and redo the notes to make sure I put the references in there. There was one on codependency and one on enmeshment. Signs of enmeshment. This is on your handout also. Number one, an inability to control our emotional involvement with a person. We get so involved with someone else emotionally. And as we see, we only begin to care about what they're thinking and feeling, and we're always preoccupied with that. We have an exaggerated sense of empathy and responsibility for the other person's feelings.
It's so true.
Now, empathy is great, but I read an article that deals with the dark side of empathy. There's a dark side of empathy. And I was like, yeah, that's true. There's a dark side to every emotion. One thing we think is positive, we can take it too far. Empathy is one of them. And so we can have an exaggerated sense of responsibility for how the other person is feeling. In other words, we make ourselves responsible for their happiness. We make ourselves responsible for their sadness. We're responsible for their joy. We're responsible for their self-esteem. We make ourselves, and we're not responsible. Again, you can contribute, but you're not responsible for it. Here's another sign that you are enmeshed is you have fear of conflict in the relationship. You're afraid to say or do anything that will upset the other person.
Yes, come on.
Richard and Leilani, why are you guys laughing? Did you forget we can see you? No.
Does that go for your son-in-law?
What was that?
Does that go for your son-in-law too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so we can be afraid to say or do anything that will upset the other person because it's like, I don't want to upset them. I want to keep them happy. And that shows that we are enmeshed. Here's a fourth one. You feel guilty or anxious for not being preoccupied with the other person's experience or emotions. You feel bad. Because like, if you start thinking about yourself and doing things for yourself, it's like, oh, you feel bad about it. I don't have to be thinking about them. So you're concerned with how are they feeling? And I'm talking about preoccupied. Are they okay? Are they upset with me? Are they angry with me? So you're always concerned with their opinion of you. And here's another thing that can result from that. You feel trapped in the relationship. You don't feel free. You feel enslaved. You feel trapped.
Yeah.
These are all experiences and signs of enmeshment. There's an inability to feel happy if the other person is unhappy. This is why I said before, we don't want to limit our emotional well-being or make it dependent upon another person. So now don't misunderstand me. There are times it's appropriate that, if someone's unhappy, you might be like, say someone dies. Okay. If we experience a death in the family, well, yeah, maybe it's your spouse's friend. Maybe you weren't really friends with them, but hey, I'm sad because this somebody is important to you. But this is when we get over to the area of whenever they're unhappy, then it's like, I can't be happy then, and they may even say, well, how are you so happy? And so we feel like we can't be happy if the other people are unhappy. So this can also mean that our sense of worth and value gets tied up in their happiness or the lack thereof. So if they're not happy, if they're not feeling good, we tie that to our value as a person. In other words, if they are unhappy, this means that I'm a bad spouse or partner. I must be doing something wrong if they're unhappy. Those are signs of enmeshment. Number 6, You sacrifice your wants, needs, or desires to make them happy. And this goes back again. Yes, that is Myra said that's exhausting. It is. So I give up what makes me happy because, again, I can't be happy if you're happy. So I will end up sacrificing what I'm doing, what makes me happy, because I'm always working to make you happy. So let's say if going out with some friends makes me happy, but I know that you're going to be upset, I'm gonna stay home. So you don't get upset. That's unhealthy, you know. And so we start to sacrifice our own needs, our own wants, our own desires. You know, it's like Karen and I, we have different things that we do to rejuvenate, to recharge. Me, it's either going to the bookstore or going to the library. And I would just go hang out. It's how I rejuvenate. And there are times I remember when kids were younger, I grabbed my keys and my kids would hear the keys and they're like, "Dad, where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm going to the bookstore." "Can I go?" Well, if it's time for me to rejuvenate, the answer was no. Because when I take them, it's a different mindset. But when I go by myself, it's because I need to rejuvenate. And I need to be away from people. And it's how I get my energy back up again. So my point in saying that was that I understood that if I'm going to be at my best, if I'm going to function and be emotionally healthy and whole, I need that time. I can't say, because they'd be like, "Oh," I'm like, you know, and I would tell myself, "That's all right, they'll be okay." You know? I'd be like, "You want me to rejuvenate because you don't want me to be a mean, grumpy dad. You just don't want that." And so, but we can do that in our relationships with other people. Number 7 is, you know, number 6, you sacrifice your wants, needs, and desire to make them happy. This can lead to number 7. You experience resentment and anger towards your partner because they don't appreciate or thank you for the sacrifices you make for their happiness.
That's right.
You start to get ticked. It's like, I do all these things and they don't appreciate it. And I gave up going here and I gave up. And so resentment starts to build because you feel like they're not thanking me. And especially if they go, "I ain't ask you to do that."
Yeah, you're really in trouble. Yeah, you're really in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I know you just did not say. And so these are signs, and these are things we have to watch for, because it doesn't lead to a healthy relationship. It doesn't lead to happily ever after. It leads to a breakdown in the relationship. And it's like all of you have said, it's exhausting. It's too much of a burden when you're trying to carry. I remember, and Gianna, you can speak to this. I remember when Gianna let go of being responsible for Jerry. And she came in, and I remember I think it was our next session. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks before we had met. And she looked so relaxed. You just look, I remember thinking, "Man, you look," I think I even commented, I said, "You look so relaxed." And you said, "I've been so much more." Well, what did you say? What happened? What was your experience?
I just learned, I just decided, you know, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do for me. What God tells me to do, that's what I'm going to do. Whatever he does, that's between him and God. And once I just released it in that way, just that's between him and God. And what I do is between me and God. I just felt a release, and I didn't feel that burden anymore because I literally released him to the Lord, and I'm just going to do what God's asking me to do as a wife. And I cannot control or make him do anything because that's between him and God.
Right.
And once I understood that for myself, I felt so released and just free and happy.
Right. So you stopped making yourself responsible, and it released the tension. There was no more. And I mean, she physically looked more relaxed.
Yeah.
You know, because she used to come into coaching, you'd be like this.
With my hand crossed.
Yeah. And Jerry, I know for yourself, you also made a decision that I'm going to do what I need to do and not look for affirmation from my. Yeah. You want to say something to that before we move on?
Yeah, I think I had to come to terms with myself too, and like we were there for marriage counseling. What I told the Lord was I wasn't going to be responsible for why this marriage didn't work. So I had to make a choice within myself, and I had to stop looking at her and look within.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't like what I'm feeling, only I can change it.
Right.
So I had to work on myself and really, look to myself and know who I was and know what I was worth.
Right.
And I looked to God, and I had to, what, the same thing that she did, I had to do with her.
Yeah.
And in that, when I started working on myself, she was working on herself, and God was working out the marriage already.
Yeah. And what tends to happen is a lot of times we are unaware that we're doing that. And it can be because of, a lot of our patterns that we live by, the things we do, they start in our childhood. So we didn't get certain things in our childhood. We didn't get certain affirmation from those that were supposed to be raising us and affirming us, or certain things happen to us in life. We can start to unconsciously, we're not aware of it, but we start looking to the other person to affirm us. And somebody said, well, is that wrong? It only becomes wrong when they become your source.
That's right.
I always like to tell people, God is your source. Another person can be a resource. In other words, God can use them to affirm you, but they should not be the only means of affirmation that you have.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's when the other person becomes your only means of affirmation. I can only feel good about me if you tell me, like I jokingly say, if the only time I can feel good is when Karen says to me, you are the most wonderful, most handsome, most dynamic husband and pastor that exists on the planet of the earth.
Okay.
No, she does tell me that, but, but if I'm waiting for that on a daily basis, what happens when she's just not in the mood to say that day? What happens to my worth value? So it's not that as husbands and wives, as partners, we don't ever affirm each other. Yes, we do. There's a biblical basis for that. But it's the idea of I am dependent upon you, that if you don't do it, I have no worth, no value, I'm not happy. That becomes the problem. That's when it becomes enmeshment, and that is when we don't do well. Sal is on, and Sal said, sounds like pray about it and step out of the way because we are a couple, we must communicate in our love language, not as a source, but as a resource. Yeah, it's like learning love languages. Learning love languages is great. Because you understand what is it, and you when we communicate to one another out of our love languages, it's because we love each other. However, I don't wait for Karen to communicate to me a certain way for me to feel like I have worth and value.
Right.
I possess my worth and value independent, and then let me again say, she says things, she does things that affirms my worth and value, but I'm not waiting for her to do that.
Yeah.
And because if you wait for the other person to do it, one, you may not get it. They may not do it. Or they may not know to do it. They may not know how to do it. If I had waited upon Karen the first 7 years of our marriage to communicate to me worth and value, because the first 7 years, when you have your wife not wanting to be touched, there's no public displays of affection, she doesn't want to hold hands, I used to think there was something wrong with me. I thought, what's wrong with me as the husband? It took me a while to catch on, this is not about me. Yeah, and she would, by the way, she would tell me, she goes, it's not you. And I would think to myself, well, who else is it? I'm the only one here. That's what I would think, because there ain't nobody else here. But this, and again, we didn't understand all the stuff about PTSD and everything. So I thought it was me. And it was impacting how I was beginning to see myself, and God in his grace began to say, no, it's not you. It's not you. And so I began to have my joy, my peace, and we're going to talk about how you do that independent of what Karen could and could not give me at the time. Let me share with you before we close. But does anybody have any questions or comments about this before we go on? Any questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Deb.
I think that also has a lot to do with when you mention your childhood. It has a lot to do with competitiveness among siblings. Parent sees that one is doing so great in this, and children will compete with each other for their parents' approval. So, and it carries over into your adult life. I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. It comes from different sources, and one of it is that sometimes, especially if you have, I had a friend of mine who, to this day, he struggles with feeling loved by God because his entire childhood was performance-based. His parents did not, it's like, only if you did well do we show you love. Do we show you that we go, hey, good job. And you have to perform at a certain standard and maintain it. You fall below it, you didn't get that. And so, yeah, Deb, you're right. People get that in their families, and the competitiveness time you compare one child against another. And so people grow up. I think, Jerry, you shared that one time, that a feeling that where sibling was concerned, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was with my brother. Remember, I think it was my brother. But at the same time, it's like we began with marriage counseling, but then what it came out to, the roots of a lot of what I was picking up, acting out as an adult, was a reflection of how I was, how I was when I grew up, the way I was
Right.
treated, whether being competitive with my brother, you know, certain things, and not feeling good enough, not comparing to who my brother was, you know, and then, you know, that rolled over into my marriage to where I started to look at myself, man, I'm not good enough for my wife. Man, she deserves better than who I am. I am nobody. I'm a loser. You know, all from childhood hurts that I never dealt with as a kid. Growing up to an adult, I brought that into my marriage. My wife had no idea why I was acting the way I was acting,
Right.
but I was lashing out at her because of what I hadn't dealt with
Right.
as a child.
And it did not come out as, oh, I mean, you didn't go out and say to Gianna, I'm a loser, I don't deserve you. That's not how it came out.
Oh, no, not at all.
It manifested itself in different ways that was
Correct.
detrimental to your marriage.
Yes, exactly.
But it was childhood patterns of behavior, feeling, of thinking. That's why I said we got to put away, and I can say where Jerry was concerned, when we discovered that, because I don't know how aware of it you were at the time.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Through the coaching process, it came up.
Yeah.
And it started to explain some of your behavior.
Yeah, my behavior patterns, yeah.
This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm responding this way to Gianna. You know, and so when you started to own that, and we began to, one of the exercises we'll be doing later, grounding your sense of worth and value in God, not in what other people thought about you, you experienced quite a shift.
Yeah, a very big shift. You know, because I didn't know, I really didn't understand my true value.
Yeah.
You know, I was serving God for over 10 years already, and I still couldn't grasp my worth and value, even though I could quote scripture and all that stuff. I didn't know my worth because I had things that I was dealing with still.
Yeah, this is so important because you guys were leaders in your church.
Yeah, and
leaders struggle with this. I know because I meet with a lot of leaders, and people ask me all that, they go, "Am I crazy?" I go, "No, you're not crazy." You're not crazy. Because once you get inside and you find out why they are doing it makes perfect sense. I tell people all the time, I say, inside your world, your behavior makes perfect sense. I said, I've never met anybody yet that I've worked with that their behavior does not. When you look at it on the outside, you go, why are they doing that? What's wrong with them? But once you get inside, you go, oh, okay, this makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense while you're doing it. And it was, and a lot of times, going back to what Debbie said, I would say 95 to 97, 99% of the problems are rooted in childhood stuff.
Yes.
It's rooted in childhood stuff. And so that's why we see the immaturity in terms of our actions and behavior.
Yes.
Because it's what you were enacting, Jerry, was stuff from your childhood.
Right.
Even though you had grown up body, you had patterns that were from your childhood that were still functioning.
I think you would always say it doesn't excuse what I did, but it explained why I did.
Yeah, we never made an excuse for it. He said but when we found out what it was, the why explained the what.
Yeah, there you go. The why explained the what.
And then we had to change it. We had to change it.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't just go, oh, so that's your problem. Okay, we'll do better.
Move on. Put it behind you.
Well, I want to do an exercise with all of you that can help with enmeshment and to keep the boundaries, establish boundaries. And I think we're going to have time to do this. This is called and this again is in your handout. This is really the second part of the ownership exercise. We call it me, not me. It's one of my favorite exercises to do. And we apply it in different ways. So again, I want you to sit back, take a nice deep breath. And by the way, let me ask this before I move. Did everybody express their comments? And thank you, Debbie, for sharing that. Thank you, Jerry and Gianna, for sharing.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Everybody got it? Okay, good. So we're going to do this. What I want you to do is, I want you to, we all have our own personal boundaries. And usually you can tell your personal boundary when somebody walks up to you and you feel like somebody's getting too close. Like, okay, you didn't enter into my space. So I want you to, back up. Exactly, back up. I want you to think about for a second, your personal boundary starts with yourself and it extends out so far. It's different for everybody. Everybody has different personal space. So what I'd like you to do is to mark out for yourself, starting with, you can place your hand on your chest and then push your hands out for you. How far from yourself out does your personal space extend? So mark that out for yourself. You can use your hands to kind of go, okay, well, mine's from here, and it kind of goes a little bit beyond my computer or my personal space, where I count my personal space. Now, that doesn't mean people can't get close to me, but I thought about when people start coming in, it's like, okay, now you look too close, depending on who they are. Okay.
Right.
But I want you to mark out for yourself what is your general space. So just kind of mark it out around you.
Mine is my arm length.
Okay, your arm length. Good.
Arm length, yeah.
Okay, so
Arm length, yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Nice and clear.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want you to do is I want you to notice something that is outside of your personal space. And it could be a few feet, a few inches, but notice something, especially if it's a few feet. Like I can look and I see a stack of books. If you see my room, I got books everywhere. But I can see a stack of books a few feet from me. And so and it's outside my personal space. All right. So I want you to notice something. I can look and I see my a hat that I own. It's outside of my personal space. All right. So I want you to be aware of whatever object you're focusing on that is outside of your personal space. And what I want you to do, we're going to establish a sense of boundary between what is you and what is not you. So I want you to put your hand on your chest and feel your chest and just become aware of yourself sitting where you're at. Just become aware of yourself sitting. And as you touch your chest, I want you to say to yourself, me.
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 And then I want you to extend, hold your, actually pick both of your hands here. Go me.
Me.
And then with one of your hands, I want you to point to the object outside of your personal space. And I want you to go, not me.
Not me.
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 Not me.
Not me.
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 Not me.
Not me.
Okay. And I want you to do that a few times. I want you to get a real clear distinction between what is you and what is not you. Just do that a few times until it's really clear for you. Okay, yeah, this is me. That over there, that's not me.
Not me.
Not yes. No.
Me.
Me.
What happened?
Is everybody still there?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I can hear and see everybody too.
Okay.
All right, me and not me.
Not me.
Now, this is just to establish the distinction between what is you and what is not you.
Not me.
To get very clear about that. So then what I want you to do is this. When you got that clear distinction, I want you to think about and imagine someone whose words, their emotions, their behavior, it can impact you in ways that sometimes you don't find useful. It doesn't help you to be at your best. They can look at you a certain way, they can say something or do something, and it's like, this really doesn't help me to be at my best. Okay? Think about that person. Think about something that they normally say or do. And by doing, I mean, they might look at you a certain way, they might say something, they might do something in terms of actual behavior. And when that happens, it's like, and you're not at your best. Now, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, don't make this a 10, which is really bad. Make it about a 4 or 5. 5 or less for the purpose of this exercise. I don't want anybody going to trauma, then I have to do counseling with you later. I'm like, oh my God. All right, so think about it and just go, me. Just one more time, me. Point to the object that you're looking at, go, not me.
Me.
Not me.
It's outside your space. I want you to imagine now that person outside of your space.
Oh.
They are outside of your space, not in your space, they're outside of your space.
Yeah.
And I want you to imagine that person doing the behavior or saying the thing or giving you the look that in the past normally would have bothered you. So is it certain words they use? It is a certain tone of voice? Is it a certain facial expression or gesture? Just want you to imagine what it is that in the past would have bothered you.
My wife's attitude.
Okay? And once you imagine that, I want you to imagine them doing it right now, but they're outside of your space. Imagine seeing that cue, that trigger that in the past might upset you. And as you imagine that person outside of you and they are saying the thing, the words, or doing the gesture or the behavior outside of your space, I want you to touch your chest again. I want you to go, me.
Me.
And point towards the person. And I want you to imagine, again, you're pushing their words, their facial expression outside of your personal space and going, not me.
Not me.
In other words, you're not allowing their words. You're not allowing their facial expression. You're not allowing their behavior into your mental and emotional space. So I want you to imagine that you're seeing it or hearing it again.
Yeah, I'm like,
And I want you to go, me, not me.
Not me.
not me.
Okay. All right. So do that again. Just so imagine you see it and hear it. And I want you to be aware of yourself. This is me. Their expression, their words, their behaviors, that's not me. Right? And I want you to imagine their words coming towards you, their facial expression coming towards you to bother you, and you go, me, and push it back out. Not me.
Not me.
Not me.
It starts to come in, but this is your space. In other words, you can go, this space, mine. It's my thinking, my emoting, my feelings, my words, my behavior. This is all my space. So this is mine. Their words, not mine. Their facial expression, not mine, not me. Their anger, not me, not mine. It's theirs. You let them have it. This is me. This is not me. And you can even say, this is me. Everything here is mine. This is yours.
This is yours.
This is yours. No, and so say this. I'm responsible for me.
I'm responsible.
for me.
You are responsible for you.
You are responsible for you.
I'm responsible for me.
I'm
responsible
You're responsible for you.
You're responsible
for you.
I'm responsible for me,
I'm responsible for me,
for my thinking,
for my thinking,
for my words,
for
my
my
words,
how I feel,
how I feel,
for what I do.
what I do.
I'm responsible for how I relate to you.
I'm responsible for how I relate to you.
You are responsible for you.
You're
You're responsible for you.
Okay, so me,
me,
not me.
not me.
Not me.
Their words,
Their words,
Their
Not mine.
words,
not
not
mine.
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 their feelings,
Their
their
feelings,
not mine.
Not mine.
not mine.
Come on, that's good.
Their facial expressions,
Their facial
Facial
expression,
expressions,
not mine.
not mine.
Their behavior,
their
Behavior,
not mine.
not mine.
I respond to them,
I
I
respond.
respond to them,
but I'm not responsible for them.
but I'm responsible for them.
Me,
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 not me.
not me.
Take a deep breath. Okay. How does that feel?
Wonderful.
Yeah,
liberating.
some of y'all smiling like, whoo, thank you. Now, this is what I want you to do. I want you to imagine that person outside of you, again, outside of your space. Maybe you see them at work or something, and or you see them in life, whatever it is. You see them, you hear them. They say or do the thing that in the past you don't like. And by the way, you can still not like it, but I want you to notice now the difference when you recognize this is me, and I don't have to let that in.
Right.
And I want you to imagine them saying or doing the thing that in the past used to bother you, but notice how it's different now when you make a distinction between what is mine, what I can let in, and what I choose not to let in. And notice how it's different now.
Yeah,
How many of you can say it's different?
it's different.
Different, okay. How is it different? What's different?
The person, as I'm imagining that person, and it's a person at my job. It's more of a squawk. It's not me. You know.
Yeah. Cool.
It's hard for me to explain it, but that's how I feel about it. You know.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Anyone else? How is it different?
To me, it's like it helps me to process the emotions and what they're saying, so I don't have to take ownership. I don't have to react to it quickly. Gives me a chance to say, okay, that's him. I don't have to like jump into it.
Right. That's good. So I don't have to respond right away. I don't have to jump into this.
Right.
Yes.
That's good, Myra. Thank you.
They're in that space,
Yeah.
that decision space.
Okay. Anyone else? Genesis, did you want to share anything?
It left me a little bit confused because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what if the person is what they're saying or doing in that moment, it's theirs,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately it leaves you feeling, or it's theirs and you're here,
Mm-hmm.
but some things are deal breakers, you know, in a
Mm-hmm.
way. And then ultimately you can say, okay, that's you,
Mm-hmm.
but what you're choosing to do then leaves me ultimately feeling like I have to make a decision, and therefore you feel unloved.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, what they chose to do leaves you feeling unloved.
Mm-hmm.
You
So
know,
what do you do with that in terms of the
well, yeah,
decision you have to make?
like that's kind of a reality, right? They could
Mm-hmm.
be doing something, or their action is communicating to you, if you're honest about the
Mm-hmm.
facts or what's being said, okay, that is not love. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore now I'm not, I mean, we have a right to say what they're doing to me, they do not love me.
Mm-hmm.
So you're left with sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. So number one, it could be okay to be sad. Doing this, it's not the idea that you can't ever be sad. Remember I said before, like there are times when we did the ownership, and I said, so I no longer operate from you make me angry. It is I'm frustrated or I'm angry with this. In the same way with sad, I'm sad at this. Case in point, I had to separate a few years ago from a good friend of mine. He was engaged in some behaviors that were both, well, it was really immoral behavior. And he had an attitude where he literally said to me, I don't care what anyone says, I am going to do this. And I can, because I'm not telling his name, he was cheating on his wife. He was involved with another woman. I found out about it. And he flat out told me, I don't care what anybody says, I'm going to be with this woman. And he was a Christian, a leader in a church. And I said, this is wrong. And he's like, I don't care. And he said, you can't judge me. I said, well, we can't hang out like I know he wanted to, and you're seeing somebody else, because I know the next thing he was going to be like, can I bring her over? I'm like, oh no, first of all, Karen was not going to have that, and I'm not going to have it either. And so
not me.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to say to him, I had to say to him, no, it's okay. I had to say to him, we're going to have to, I'm going to have to cut off relationship with you because I can't, we're not walking the same path anymore. He went down a really bad path. He said to me at that point, he goes, you know what? You're not really a friend. If you were my friend, you would accept me no matter what. So he tried to play that whole thing. If I was enmeshed with him, it would have been like, oh no, I don't want him to be upset, everything. I was like, no, I said, and I even said to him, because he says, where's your Christian love? That's what he said to me. Where's your Christian love?
Wow.
And I said back to him, I'm the wrong person to try that with. You don't want to do that with me. And I said, because you know where I stand when this is concerned. I said, it is love to tell you the truth.
That's right.
And then he said to me, you don't have to worry about me ever darkening your doorstep again. And I said, okay. I was sad. And it was right to be sad. We had been friends for a long time. And the relationship for a period of time did end. But it was truly a me, not me. I didn't take in what he was saying about me not being a good Christian, not being loving. That was him. I didn't believe in any of that. But when the relationship for that time period ended, it was right to be sad. Mm-hmm. It was right to be upset, because to be sad means usually you're grieving something that you've lost. And that was a loss for me. So I would say that if that's a situation, and like you, I had to make a decision where the relationship was concerned. I've had to do that over the years. I had to do that with another guy that I was friends with and had been like a mentor to me. And this guy was treating people just horribly. And I found out about it and I confronted him about it. And I was like, I can't work with you. We can't do this because of the way you're treating people. And it was sad. And I was sad. And I remember later on when with this other person we were talking and we were sharing with some other friends, and when his name came up, I didn't realize I was doing this. I bow my head and I do like this. And Karen pointed out to me, she said, she said, whenever someone mentions his name, you bow your head and you start shaking. You get a sad look on your face and you shake your head. I said, I do? She goes, yeah, every single time. She said, I've never seen you look so sad over someone. It's because this is someone I've been close to.
Yeah, because you honored their relationship.
Exactly. So what I'm saying to you, Genesis, is there are times when we do me, not me, and it may mean, and I have said to people, if people will not respect the boundaries of your relationship, if they don't respect your values, you may need to reevaluate whether or not you want to be in that relationship.
That's right.
And I think it's harder when you're talking about like a spouse or a companion, and it's it's the type of thing where, like, let's say the husband is driving too fast and the wife says, and I'm not married, so this isn't like true to my life, but I have companions in my life, there's similar things, and the wife isn't comfortable now. The husband's driving too fast and his ego kind of takes over, and now her comfort level is trumped by his pride. And so there's moments like that where when the one partner, their actions and their behavior and their decision, it makes, now that's them, but that, to me, and I'm not maybe saying this right, I'm just talking frankly to you, it communicates, okay, you're not loving me more
right
than you're loving that.
Right.
And so
they're not valuing you.
So that's you and this is me, but now I do feel a lack of value. I don't feel cherished.
Right.
And so then there is a sadness.
Right.
And so where do you go from there?
And that is where you learn to have your sense of worth and value, and even feeling loved and cherished independent of the person.
Right.
And this goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning, where you don't make your emotion, and I specifically said also your emotional well-being, dependent upon and limited to the other person. Because it's very, I was like, first of all, what is that? But there are times when and there are times, this happens in marriages, that the other person does not express to you in their words and actions that they love and value you. What I say to people is, that doesn't mean, though, that you have to live your life feeling unloved and without value. I think Jerry and Gianna, you guys went through that because of things that was going on. And let me say to Gianna first, there's a time when you did not feel loved and valued.
Right.
But what did you learn to do?
It was just like to recognize that what Jerry was doing, it was because of the stuff he was dealing with. It wasn't where I was falling short as a wife or where I was making him codependent on me. It was just issues that he was dealing with. And once recognizing that, I didn't feel so bad. And to see that he wanted to make the effort to get the help that he needed, he did it individually, and then I started getting my help individually, because it has to be an effort, individual effort, individual decision. If this is what you want, and if you want the help, if you want to find out why are you lacking, or why are you, feeling a certain type of way that's not good, or that's not healthy for your marriage. And for me, even though he was the one that was struggling with stuff, I was taking on what he was struggling like it was my struggle also. But I learned that it's him personally, something that he's got to deal with. I couldn't control it. I couldn't help him. All I could do was support him and love him through it. And that was one of the things that the Lord gave me, was just this unconditional love that me as a human, I didn't even think I had. I didn't think I had compassion for what we were going through. And the Lord just gave me this compassion and love towards him to let him be him and let him seek out the Lord on his own, while I sought out the Lord on my own as well. And then it just, it makes you feel, you know, free, that this is, I'm only here, me, my personal area, but that's him over there. And him over there, he's not alone. Even though I'm not trying to control him, he's not alone. God is over there with him. And that helped me to be at peace and to just really, you know, trust in the Lord for what we're going through.
And so you learn to have your peace, your sense of worth and value, independent. Because I know one of the things that you struggled with at one point was you guys had to step down from ministry.
Yes.
And that impacted you because you're like, I'm not doing anything wrong. Why do I gotta
Right.
step down?
I did. I was hurt and I was angry and I blamed him. Why do I have to suffer consequences for his actions?
Right.
You know, why do I have to be sat down? I was still, you know, 100% pushing forward, but in the moment it was more an added on hurt to my pride because of what was going on. And recognizing that and taking a step back, it was like, no, I do need to be sat down because I was an emotional wreck. Everything around me was chaotic. I remember telling you, I feel like I'm in the middle of a tornado and everything's spinning out of control, you know, and that's how I was emotionally. My emotions were all out of control and I didn't know how to master my emotions. They were controlling me. I was all over the place. So once, just taking responsibility of what was mine and what was his over there, learning how to do that, it really just set me free and to be at peace, free to be at peace.
So going back to Genesis, what you were asking before, part of it is, and this is what I often will work with couples on, is that because you do experience sometimes where one spouse is not saying or doing things that will show love toward the other. I experienced that in my relationship with Karen. There are times I didn't feel loved. Matter of fact, for those of you that know the story, I would say to Karen, this is the early years of our marriage, I go, I love you. And she would look at me and go, I don't know how to love you. And she would say, and she never would say, I love you. She didn't say, I love you, but I don't know how to love you. She just go, I don't know how to love you. I just don't. And I would look at her and I literally would think to myself, lie to me. Just lie to me. Just let me. Just lie. I did. Just tell me what I was thinking in my head. Just lie to me. But she would say that, so I didn't feel love. So what I had to learn to do was because to feel love really is to feel valued. When someone loves you, you feel valued. And what I tell couples all the time is you do not have to not feel valued because the other person is not doing what they are supposed to do, which is to cherish you. From a Christian perspective, we're supposed to cherish our wives as husbands. We're to cherish our wives. What men like to feel is respect. That's how we feel our value. Men like to feel, we want to feel respected by our spouses as a rule. I always tell us that most men, we want to be the hero. We want to be Superman or Batman. We want to be the hero. We want to be the hero. If we are not the hero in our, because, you know, I've heard people say, and I think it's really true. They said, women want to feel secure. They want to feel cherished. That's how they feel loved. I believe that's true. The way men feel loved is that we know we have your respect. If we don't feel we have your respect, and if we're not secure within ourselves, it will mess us up. We will get messed up. So what I endeavor to do and what we're doing here, so Genesis, we're going to be coming to this more, is how do I feel worthwhile? How do I feel valued when my spouse, for whatever reason, is unable to communicate that to me? When Karen and I do premarital coaching, that's one of the things we actually deal with. We make sure that that's intact before they get married. Because if you, I think one of the worst things to do is to go into a marriage expecting your spouse to fulfill that need within you. We are not, let me put it to you like this, and then I'm gonna let you guys go. We're not designed to be the source of one another's well-being.
That's good.
To be the source of it. We can contribute, we can affirm it, but we're not designed. Everybody in here, when we talked about the enmeshment, when you become the source of someone's emotional well-being, it becomes after a while a burden. And you start to feel trapped. And you start to feel like you don't want to be in the relationship, you know, or worse, you stay in it and it becomes very toxic. So one of the things we want to learn to do is to learn to have our sense of worth and value independent of the other person. Actually, what ends up happening is you become interdependent, meaning that I am able to function apart from you, but I'm able to allow you into my life and to bring me affirmation, to bring me love. But if for whatever reason you can't do that, it might throw me for a moment, but I always recognize I have a source and you're just a resource. And I'm always connected to my source. And that's what and this comes out of me learning to do that in my early years with Karen. And it wasn't that she didn't want to love me. It wasn't that because she would say to me, she would cry and she would say, I'm sorry, I don't want to be this way. I don't want to do this. She didn't know what to do. And so I had to start learning, how do I have my sense of worth and value?
Mm-hmm.
First thing I had to learn was it wasn't me. That was the first thing. It took me a while to learn that. And then it was like, how do I feel worthwhile as a husband? How do I have a sense of worth? Because here's the other thing. If you don't feel that, the other danger is, for some people, not all, the other danger is you start looking outside your marriage for someone to bring that to you.
That's right.
And I had to learn to protect my heart to not allow that to happen. So the early years, and it's funny, but I said I was very careful about what I watched on television. I was very careful about the movies that I went to. I don't think I went above a PG, and sometimes I didn't even I think I watched a lot of G movies in the first years because I was very careful. But I was very careful about who I talked to. I had friends that were females, but I was very careful about that because the thought would come, oh, you should call so-and-so. You haven't seen them for a while. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Because I knew I was in a vulnerable place and I was still learning the tools. And I thought, I don't want to set myself up to create problems. And so I had to learn to find my worth and my value apart from my wife affirming me, apart from her saying or doing certain things that made me feel valued. And that way I didn't go outside my marriage. I never went outside my marriage. And I'm very thankful to God that I can say that. But it was because I had to, and I can tell you the reason most people go outside their marriage, the major thing that I've seen over and over is because at some point they don't feel valued. But what I've told every person, whether female or male, I said, they'll say, my wife didn't do this, or my spouse, my husband didn't do this. I said, I understand that. And they go, I didn't feel valued. I said, I understand that. But that's no reason for you to step outside your marriage. Because you can still feel value. Because people will use that as an excuse to step out. And I never allowed that as an excuse. And I don't condemn them. What I'll say is, now we need to help you to find a way to feel valued, to feel joy. Because that's another one. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. Why are you not happy? Because my spouse doesn't do this or this or this. Okay, well, then you're going to have to find your happiness apart from your spouse. I had a guy one time say to me, he was really unhappy in his marriage. He goes, my spouse and I, we don't do things. She doesn't. I want to go to the museum. She doesn't want to go to the museum. I want to go look at paintings. I said, okay. I said, why don't you go? He said, by myself? I said, yeah. And he was like, I can do that? I was like, yes. I said, do you enjoy it? Yes. I said, doesn't mean she has to enjoy it. Go to the museum. And then and you know why he didn't go at first? She'll be upset that I went without her. And so again, it was a thing of me, not me. Let her be upset, but you go do what you enjoy, and then come back and say, what can we do that you will enjoy? He told me, he said he finally did some things that he finally enjoyed. He went to the spa. He went to the museum. He went to the spa. He got a massage. He called me later. He said, man, that was the most relaxing day I ever had. But he didn't give himself permission to enjoy life because he thought, I can't do it because my wife doesn't want to do it. So he stopped enjoying life. And he was dangerously moving towards stepping outside of his marriage. Because it's like, I'll find somebody who will do it with me. I was like, you don't have to have anybody. Just go enjoy yourself. Go enjoy life. So this is why, honestly, I'm doing this class, is to help all of us. How can we find the joy, the peace? And so part of owning my feelings and my emotions is to know that, hey, because honestly, here's the thing. Now, this will be the last thing I say. Someone can actually value you and you not experience it.
Yeah.
Someone can love you and you still not feel loved. Is that true, Jerry?
Yep.
So here's the thing. You're feeling valued or you're feeling love is not really totally dependent on the other person. It's also dependent upon what you do inside your own head. Because someone can love you and you not feel it. Yep. Matter of fact, I was talking with someone about this the other day. There are people who know intellectually God loves me, but they don't feel it. They can quote you all the scriptures, but they have no experience of it. And it's because, like one lady I worked with, she could not experience God as Father because of how she was treated by her father.
Yeah.
Now, did God love her? Yes. Did God love her as a father? Yes. Did she know the scriptures that dealt with this? Yes. But did she really have an experience of it? No. So even if someone values you, if you've got beliefs, if you've got past experiences, it can block that, which says that it's not simply just my sense of feeling worth and value is not just what the person does, it's also what I go inside and do. Which also means I can have a sense of worth and value independent of you.
That's right.
Now, ideally, the way it is supposed to work is I have my sense of worth and value, and you affirm that through your words and actions. That's how it's supposed to work in marriage. But if we look at it realistically, it doesn't always work that way.
Glad you said that, because I'm trying to piece this all together, you know, and I do feel like I come at a little bit of a deficit to this whole topic, but so I'm glad that that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And I think I was asking, you know, when it doesn't, you know, where do you go?
And that's what we're going to be getting into other sessions. In our next session, as a matter of fact, we're going to start talking about how do you access, like, and maybe the first thing I'll do is, how do you feel good about yourself when the person who's supposed to be doing that doesn't contribute to that? How do you establish your own? I mean, I don't, it's in my plans to do it, that how do you establish your sense of worth and value independent of that, independent of the other person? And it can be done. It can be. I've lived it. This is one of the reasons I'm so excited about it, because I know, and I got at least 2 people here, and actually Sal's been through a lot of my stuff too, and Myra, they can testify that, yeah, you can live this way, you know, and even when the other person is not, because again, it's being honest, and I always try to be honest with you. I say, look, matter of fact, when I do premarital coaching, we tell the couples, look, one of the reasons Karen and I, we do the premarital coaching, I try to coach them from 6 months to a year. Then I tell them, after you're married, we're going to walk with you for at least another year to 3 years to 5 years, or another year to 5 years, because the first 5 years of marriage are difficult. And so we walk with them. They call us. We continue the coaching. But I tell them, you must learn to love. You must learn to have sense of worth and value. You must learn to have joy independent of your partner. Why? I said, no matter how much you like each other now, you're going to wake up one morning and say, you know what? I don't like you. I don't like you today. And I don't like your mama. So it's I don't like you, your mom, I don't like none of your family. I mean, that's real. That is real. That is real. So what do? You have choice. And we're going to show you how to exercise the emotional choice so that you don't follow through with that and just start telling people, I don't like you, I don't like your mama, I don't like nobody in your family, I should have never married you. You don't have to go down that route. But it is, so the third part of this, we talked about.
Sometimes it helps.
Huh? Sometimes it helps.
I'm kidding.
But so this goes to what the third portion we're going to be getting into. We said first is choice, always exercise choice, personal responsibility. The third foundational stone, which we'll cover over the next few sessions, is how do you create and transform your internal experience? And that's what we're going to be covering and giving you the tools to do that. Okay, so hang on, Genesis, we're getting to it. All right, was this helpful?
Yes, awesome.
Oh, cool. All right, great. So we won't be meeting next week because it is Easter. Which I forgot. When I originally did the schedule, Karen went, you know that's Easter, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So we'll be meeting the following week after Easter. So, but I do have a homework assignment for you. And your homework assignment really is simply to practice these 2 tools. To do the exercise where you're owning your responsibility and the me, not me.
Okay.
Practice those 2 tools. Let me give you a real quick, funny, and cute story. I taught this to a guy who would come to me for help in his marriage. He would get upset with his wife because his wife would call him stupid in their marriage. She would get upset. She was feeling insecure about the marriage. And these were deacons in the church. They were part of the church. I used to be associate pastor. Long story short, he says, Pastor Mike, I get so upset. She calls me stupid sometimes, and that just really bothers me. And there's some other work we had to do with it was childhood stuff again. But this really bothered him. Now he never like hit her or anything, but he would get mad. Like one time I was with them, he got up and he threw his chair, and I was like, okay, all right, you're not doing this. So I taught him the me, not me. He came privately. Like I told him, I said, I want to meet with you privately. He goes, I don't want to. He said, how do I stop that? So I said, okay, this is what I want you to do. So I taught him the me, not me. Me, not me. And so I said, imagine your wife outside of you. She's calling you stupid. And you go, me, not me. So we did that several times. He goes, yeah, it's feeling different now. So he went home. They came back 2 weeks later. I asked them how they were doing. And he's like, we're doing fine. And I thought, well, let me check. Let me ask his wife. And she goes, no, he's doing so much better. He doesn't get mad anymore like he used to. He doesn't fly off the handle. Even sometimes when I know I'm not supposed to say it, but I call him stupid, he doesn't get mad. I went, really? And he told me, he said, Pastor Mike, I practiced what you told me. Now, remember, I was with him by himself. His wife wasn't there when I taught him this. His wife said, the only problem I have is that sometime when we're talking, he does this.
That's cute.
So what he was doing was, if he felt like he was getting upset, he was going, not me, not me. She said, it's like he's pushing me away. Why is he pushing me away? And so I had to explain to her, and I taught her how to do the me, not me, so she wouldn't get upset. But it was so funny because she said, he would go, she's like, he's pushing me away. But it worked for him to help him to remain calm and to hear what she had to say. So practice this over the next few weeks and notice, I want you to notice the difference it makes as you just, hey, you know what, I'm responsible and this is me, but your thoughts, your words, it's not me. I'm responsible for me, I'm responsible to you, but I'm not responsible for your thinking. I want you to just notice how it's different. Okay?
All right.
All right. Thank you all so much. I will see you in 2 weeks.
All right.
Have a great Easter if I don't talk to you all before then. And we'll be back here for session number 3. And we're going to get into how to create and transform your experience. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mike. Bye, everyone.
Bye.